This is the last gift I'll ever give you, my husband sneers, shoving divorce papers across the table. I've decided to marry someone else, so thanks for being my cash dispenser all these years. The man I've spent so many years with turns out to be a terrible person, and this is the story of my revenge. My name is Jessica, and I'm about to turn 50. Tomorrow is a significant day for me, not just because of my birthday, but because I will finally be free from the debt that has burdened me for so long. My husband, Lance, and I have worked hard together for the last 2 decades. We married when I was 30 and he was 35. He had inherited a liquor store from his parents, who had passed away while I was an office worker at the time. We met through a mutual acquaintance and quickly began dating, with marriage already in mind. But I had one concern. What if he asked me to run the store with him? At the time, I was working as a financial consultant, advising individuals and corporate clients on insurance and investment strategies. I earned a solid income and loved my job. I was even studying for certification to advance my career when Lance proposed to me. "I know you've been working hard to get that certification," he said. "I want to support you in any way I can. I have enough staff at the store to manage on my own, so you should continue pursuing your dreams." His reassurance was the final push I needed to marry him. He seemed kind, supportive, and genuinely on my side, just the kind of person I wanted to build a life with. So, as agreed, he focused on his business, and I focused on my career. We both thought our marriage was going well. But about a year into our marriage, everything changed. I was spending my day off at home while Lance was at work. As I vacuumed under the bed, the vacuum caught on a pile of papers. We had only been living in this house for 6 months, so I was surprised to find such a mess. Curious, I picked up a crumpled piece of paper and opened it. The bold letters at the top of the page hit me like a ton of bricks. Reminder of payment. The total amount of debt owed in Lance's name was $200,000. $200,000. My head started spinning. Why had he hidden such a massive debt from me? I confronted him as soon as he came home. "What is this debt? What's going on?" "It's not what you think," he said quickly. "It's debt left to me by my parents." The debt wasn't personal. It was tied to his liquor store, passed down from his parents along with the business. It was secured by the land and the house we lived in, so he had no intention of renouncing the inheritance. I understood that it wasn't his personal debt, but it was still something that couldn't be ignored. "But this is a payment reminder," I pointed out. "Aren't you paying it off every month?" "I am," he replied, "but sales fluctuate from month to month. Sometimes, during the slower months, I can't keep up with the payments. I have to pay my staff first, so I've asked the creditors to wait." That's when the letter came. At first, his explanation seemed reasonable, but delaying payments was clearly not a good idea, especially with a letter that included the words "final notice." "I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to panic," he added quickly. "But don't worry, the business is on track and we haven't been evicted from the house, right?" "That's true, but—" I looked at him with concern. Then he brought up something unexpected. "If you're so worried, why don't you help me pay it off? You're making quite a bit, aren't you?" I hesitated, uneasy with the direction the conversation was taking. This was his store, not mine. But then he added, "We're husband and wife. We're supposed to help each other. My debt is your debt too." "That's a bit sudden," I replied, taken aback. "Are you okay with my store going out of business?" he asked. "A lot of people would suffer if it closed down, you know." He had a point. His store had become an essential part of the community. It was located in a suburban area with few other shops or supermarkets around. He sold fresh foods like meat and fish and even offered a home delivery service. I had visited the store several times, and it was always busy. Customers often mentioned how grateful they were to have it in the neighborhood. "Please, honey," he pleaded. "I'm focused on keeping the business running, but I need your help to pay off these debts." I respected his dedication to his work and the effort he put into the store. I didn't want to see it disappear. I didn't want that to happen at all. Being married means supporting each other through thick and thin, and if he was struggling, it seemed only natural for me to help him. "Okay," I agreed. "I'm repaying as much as I can every month from my salary," I assured him. "You can focus on managing the store." I could help financially, but only he could run the business. I was glad that he relied on me above all else. But that was the beginning of a change in him. About 3 years passed since I took over his debt. He started coming home late more often. "What were you doing so late? Drinking again?" I asked. "I just had a few drinks with some customers," he said casually. Did you make the payment this month? His tone was condescending, something I hadn't noticed before. I did, last week. Why? The store depends on you, so you'd better keep paying on time, he remarked. Whenever he got drunk, he began giving me orders. At first, I dismissed it as nonsense from a tipsy husband, but as it became a habit, it started to get under my skin. He made it seem as if it was normal for me to pay off his debt. By the way, Matt just had his third kid, he added one day. I envy him. Matt, his friend from high school, also owned a business. His wife worked in the store alongside him. I've been wanting to talk to you about that, I said, finally voicing what I had been holding in. Don't you think it's time for us to start a family? His reaction was cold and dismissive. What? A baby? My business is just starting to pick up and we're still in debt. How can we be so irresponsible? I held back my frustration. Matt has 3 children now, right? We can manage one too. His parents are still in good health, and his wife helps out at the store. They're different from us, he snapped, and I couldn't argue with that. But deep down, I had always thought I would have children. When I got married, my dream of starting a family was easily crushed. So, until I pay off all your debts, we can't have a baby? Well, I guess that's how it's going to be, he replied with a smirk. If you make a lot of money and pay off the debt quickly, I might think about it. His mean smile disgusted me, but I became determined to pay off the debts as soon as possible. How blind I was. Even though his demand was irrational, I was so fixated on the idea of starting a family that I didn't question it. From that point on, I worked tirelessly for Lance. I pursued additional qualifications, took promotional exams, and secured salary increases. I started earning much more than other women my age, even making advance payments on the debt. But the debt didn't disappear easily. Before I knew it, I turned 40, and I had to give up on having children. I told myself that as long as I still had my husband, it would be enough. He relied on me, and I was willing to do anything for him. As long as I believed that, I remained content. But Lance began coming home later and later as the days went by. Sometimes, he didn't come back until morning. I was working late at the store, and before I knew it, the sun was up, he would say. I convinced myself that he was working hard to protect the store, and that I needed to do my best as his wife too. We were in this together, striving for a better future. The months and years passed, and finally, the day arrived when I would make the last payment. I had sacrificed all sorts of luxuries for the sake of the debt, but now, I wouldn't have to anymore. I could finally spend my hard-earned money the way I wanted. As I reflected on everything, I realized just how much had changed since I got married. I had been so focused on money that we had never taken a vacation or even dined at a nice restaurant. Now that we were in our 50s, I hoped we could finally start enjoying those things. On the day the last payment was due, I took the day off. I cooked a more luxurious dinner than usual, prepared a bottle of wine, and even baked Lance's favorite chocolate cake. I wanted to celebrate our new debt-free life together. When he came home from work, I set everything on the table and said, "Finally, it's over. It feels like it's been a long time, but the last 20 years have gone by so fast, haven't they?" Lance was trembling, his head hung low. I wondered if he was overwhelmed with happiness. But as I stood there, stunned, he started laughing, an eerie, unfamiliar sound that sent a chill down my spine. "What the hell is going on? Are you okay?" I asked, bewildered. Then the man I thought was my husband said something outrageous. "You're dismissed now. I'm grateful to you for the past 20 years. Thanks to you paying off all my debt, I'm finally free. Great job. I don't need you anymore." "What are you talking about?" I asked, completely at a loss. With a smug expression, he pulled something out of his bag. "This is my last present to you." In bold letters, "Petition for divorce" stared back at me, stabbing at my heart. He continued, proudly, "I've decided to marry someone else, so you're no longer of any use to me. Thanks for being my cash dispenser until now." "You're getting remarried? Have you been cheating on me all this time?" I asked, the realization hitting me like a ton of bricks. I thought back to all the late nights, the excuses about work or socializing. While I was working hard to pay off his debt, he was. He kept that smug look on his face. "I've already found my next potential wife. I want to divorce you and marry her. That's why I've been waiting for you to clear my debt." Tears welled up in my eyes as the reality of his betrayal sank in. As I stared at the feast I had carefully prepared, the sight became a blur through my tears, adding to my sadness. He shoved the divorce papers at me and barked, "Get the hell out of here." My blood boiled. anger replacing the sadness and despair I had been feeling. Fine, but you'll regret it, I managed to say. Regret it? Why would I regret divorcing an old hag like you? He sneered. Old hag? If I was an old hag, then he was an old fool. Did he really think he was still young? The absurdity of his delusion made me regain my composure. Without another word, I took the divorce papers from him. I'm going to hold on to this for now. You'll hear from me soon, I said, packing my belongings and leaving the house. 20 years of marriage ended so easily. Once I was alone, the tears finally came, tears of emptiness and frustration. The next day, I contacted my attorney, had him draft a divorce agreement, and requested a full background report on his so-called bride-to-be. Not long after, I received a call from Lance. Jessica, what the hell is this document? He shouted, his voice furious. I could practically see his face turning bright red through the phone. I remained calm, in stark contrast to his rage. That's the divorce agreement. What's the problem? I know what it is. I'm talking about this loan agreement. Why do I have to pay you back? He sounded desperate, his voice rising with each word. This is insane. It's not right. He was referring to the clause about repaying the money I had spent on his behalf during our marriage. You decided to help out of your own goodwill. Why are you digging up the past now? His frantic protests only confirmed what I had known all along. He never thought I'd stand up for myself. But now, I was done being used. What do you mean? He stammered. You did it as my wife. That was then, I replied coldly. But once we divorce, it's a different story. The regret I had hinted at earlier suddenly dawned on him. He had never considered that I might demand repayment. The moment he asked for a divorce, I had immediately thought about making him pay back every cent I'd spent on his behalf. Given my work in insurance and investments, I often dealt with clients facing divorce or inheritance issues. Thanks to that, I had the contacts of several experienced attorneys whom I consulted right away. The total amount, including interest, came to just over $300,000. I was determined to have him pay back every penny. That was all I wanted. Seeing my unwavering stance and the name of a well-known local attorney on the documents, he must have realized how serious this was. He had thought he could get rid of me without paying alimony, a laughable idea. You know I don't have much money, he muttered. Then why don't you sell the store to fund it? I suggested. If I do that, I'll have nothing left. You're 55, right? You could still find another job if you wanted to. Give me a break, he grumbled, his voice filled with desperation. Our conversation was going nowhere, and I was tempted to hang up. But there was one last thing I wanted to ask. By the way, how's it going with your new bride-to-be? That's none of your business, he snapped. I burst out laughing at his brusque attitude. Sounds like you're really going through it. Good luck with that, I said, ready to hang up. Wait, he blurted out. I've decided not to marry her. We can start over. For some reason, he was pleading with me now. I shot back my final words before slamming the phone down. Start over. Don't kid yourself. I don't want you. I couldn't believe I had spent 20 years married to this man. I wondered if others saw me as more ridiculous than him. Until the divorce, I had genuinely respected him, watching him work tirelessly for the store and his customers. I wanted to support him. But 20 years later, I realized he was just a fool. His talk of remarriage was nothing but a self-indulgent fantasy. It all started when he innocently flirted with a teenage university student who worked part-time. You're so cute, Melissa. Will you be my wife? He'd asked. She played along, jokingly replying, well, I might think about it if you let me be a full-time housewife. The truth was, he thought she was serious. To her, the idea of marrying a man nearly 40 years her senior was nothing more than a joke. When he persistently pressed her to marry him, she was horrified. Her parents had to intervene and place a restraining order against him. When I read the report from the private investigator, I laughed so hard I nearly hyperventilated. All those late nights he came home, I thought he was working hard. I had no idea. Instead, he was hitting on young girls at his favorite bars and strip joints, making a fool of himself by saying things like, I'm surprisingly popular with young girls. I'm a salesman, so I have this easygoing aura. They say I look younger. Don't you think so? The girls apparently cringed at his comments. He no longer saw any value in his old wife and viewed me only as a cash dispenser. But his delusions were laughable. No one took him seriously, and he ended up as a sad, almost stalker-like figure who nearly got into trouble with the police. Honestly, it might have been easier if he had just cheated on me. But he couldn't even manage to find a mistress. His obsession with marrying a young girl stemmed from the fact that his friend Matt had a grandchild. Matt had told me the story himself. As soon as he saw my grandchild, he said he wanted to have a child of his own. I scolded him, telling him he had no right to speak that way, especially after I had spent years paying off his debt. I was harsh, but I had no idea he had stooped so low. He was absolutely mortified. I'm glad I didn't waste my golden years with that man, I muttered to myself. My divorce was finalized, and since the division of our property wasn't clear-cut, he had some room to negotiate for his own benefit. However, he quickly gave up just because my attorney was well known. I couldn't believe how such a gutless person had managed to stay in business all that time. In the end, he sold the store to pay me back. Thankfully, his employees had already left before he sold it, so they weren't affected by his misfortune. Many customers were shocked and frowned upon him for giving up the business his parents had passed down to him. When they learned the reason was to pay off his ex-wife, the news spread like wildfire, and it almost sounded like a comedy. Even if he hadn't sold the store, the bad publicity would have eventually ruined his business. In a way, it was probably for the best that he sold it before he went bankrupt. The money from the sale wasn't enough to cover his debt, so he continues to work part-time jobs to pay me back to this day. Occasionally, I still get messages from him. It was all my fault. Can we get back together? I was out of my mind because Matt was showing off his grandkid. Even after I blocked his number, he kept calling from different phones. Eventually, I had my attorney warn him that if he continued contacting me, we'd file a restraining order. The calls finally stopped. As usual, he's terrified of the attorney. By the way, guess what I do for work now? I'm a marriage counselor. Just as I turned 50 and felt the need for a change, a friend of mine opened a matchmaking business. I quit my previous job and joined her. Now, I help singles find their match and provide advice on financial issues between couples, including how to manage insurance and other matters. It's been a hit, and our membership has grown quickly. Couples who want to have honest and thorough discussions from the start appreciate our unique service. Having gone through so much myself, I don't want others to make the same mistakes I did. Although my salary is a little lower than before, I genuinely enjoy helping others find happiness every day. I found my happiness after letting go of my ex-husband, and now I'm doing my best to be a bridge to someone else's happiness.